When I was a student, I was known for being very good at math and reading a lot of books. And so when the Mothers Club put that computer into my high school, the kids who were trying to figure it out came over to me and said, hey, help us figure this out. It's a real puzzle. And it seemed like fun. It was a challenge. How could we write software to make the computer do interesting things? But at that time, computers were so expensive, I thought of my future in terms of being a lawyer or a scientist. And it was only when I was 15 years old that I first read about the miracle of chip making. This is the idea that chips are being made smaller and smaller, and so every 2 years it's possible to make the chip twice as powerful without any increase in price. That's exponential improvement, and it's just unheard of in other parts of business. Over a 20-year period, what that means is the chip becomes 1,000,000 times more powerful. So something that would have cost $10,000 costs 1 cent. And that's exactly what's happened during these last 20 years. Computers are 1,000,000 times more powerful. We can say with great certainty that 20 years from now, computers will be again 1,000,000 times more powerful than they are today. Well, as soon as I learned about this miracle of chip making, I thought, well, what is the key missing element? And I'd been working on software, so I decided, well, maybe that was the thing that was necessary to bring all this power to life. I talked about that with a friend, Paul Allen, and we kept saying, well, what can we do? Could we start our own software company? It seemed impossible at the time because software was not done by independent companies. The companies that built the computers, IBM and DEC, they did all the software. And when we called them up and said, well, we'd like to do an operating system, they said, who are you? Well, we said, we're high school students. And that was the end of that conversation. We did have one nice job that we got, which was where a company called TRW had bid to take the Northwest power grid and control it using computers. And they had been so ambitious on this bid that they weren't getting the systems done, and it was really a tough problem. And so they kept asking around, where are their experts on this kind of computer? Well, my friends and I had become kind of famous at finding problems with these computers because one of the companies that bought the computer had a deal where as long as they could find bugs, they didn't have to pay for it. Well, for a year we kept finding bugs until finally the company said, no, you have to pay for this. But by then they recognized what we could do. And so when this project was in trouble, we got hired. And that was my first job. During the summer as a high school student, I got to work on power grid software. But there wasn't a clear path to really do a software company. So I went off to college, to Harvard. And while I was there, the very first personal computer came out. It was quite modest. It was a bag of parts that came in a plastic bag. And if you put it together, all it could do was flash its lights. There was no typewriter, there was no screen. It was fundamentally useless. But even so, because it was a computer, a lot of hobbyists bought it. And that started the industry that we have today. Now, seeing that things were getting going, I decided I needed to be on the ground floor. And so I called up a lot of friends, and together with Paul Allen, my co-founder, we started Microsoft and dedicated ourselves to building this software. At Harvard, I'd met Steve Ballmer, and he and I stayed up late at night talking a lot. He wanted to go off into the world of business, and he had gone to Detroit Country Day, and he had a view that working for a large company was absolutely where he could make his big impact. So it was interesting, about 4 years later, after Microsoft was having so many people coming to get its software, I knew I needed somebody to help me out. And so I called up Steve, and I said, you've got to come you got to come help us. We need business management. And Steve was right in the middle of going to Stanford Business School. And, you know, I dropped out of college, so I didn't think it was a very big deal. But Steve said no, his parents wanted him to finish business school, and maybe he'd talk to me in a year. Well, this was a very urgent need to get his help, so I offered him part of the company and convinced him to drop out. And since that time, he's been my partner in running Microsoft. And that's part of what's made it a lot of fun, is that we've worked together every step of the way. We created a company just built around developing software, hiring great people to do that. We use stock options. We've shared more wealth than any company in history with our employees, and it's been a central element of our success that those stock options have become very valuable. We've worked on a worldwide basis. The nice thing about software is that people's needs around the world are largely the same. The need for a spreadsheet or word processing is pretty much shared. Now, you have to learn about the world's languages. For example, in Japan and China, their alphabet has over 50,000 characters. And so you have to do a little bit of work to the software to make it appropriate for what they want to do. But by having that global approach, we've been able to get the majority of our sales outside of the United States. And it was a very smart thing, because it meant that as those countries woke up to the potential of software, we were already there working with the customers and building partnerships. And so it was far more difficult for anybody else to come in and use one of those markets to grow to a size to challenge us in the worldwide market.